The new #1 volume this week is so surprising, such a shock, it might just make you feel a little irregular. Hello everybody and welcome to another weekly countdown of the top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan. I am Justus R. Stone, and on this channel I cover all things light novels. Countdowns like this one, as well as reviews, news, and the light novel podcast is posted to this channel as well. So if you love light novels, or maybe you're just starting to discover them, get interested in them, you should consider subscribing. This week we have 5 new titles on the list. Not really surprising, the titles that hit the list this week. Not even all that surprising, the titles that managed to survive from last week. So, well, let's just get into it. At number 10, with 5,299 copies sold, Volume 2 of Bleach, Can't Fear Your Own World. This one premiered on the top 10 last week. It is the joint production of the original manga author as well as the author of Durarara or Bakano. They're writing, this is sort of like a spin-off of the Bleach series, focusing on Shuhei Hisagi, and it's about him throwing himself into a new fight as the mystery that Kaname Toisen left behind resurfaces. The story reveals more details about the 4 noble families, the Soul King, Arrancar, and Fullbringers. So if you're familiar with the Bleach universe, this basically is expanding that. We don't have these light novels licensed now. We do have the manga. Viz actually just published the 74th and final volume of the Bleach manga. They published that in October, so not too long ago. And of course there's a 366 episode anime that you can currently stream on Crunchyroll. At number 9, with 5,813 copies sold, Volume 18 of Netgame no Yome wa Onna no ka ja nai to Omotta, or as it's known in English, And You Thought There Was Never a Girl Online? This one we do not have the light novels licensed for English release. There was a 12 episode anime which was licensed by Funimation. After mustering up the courage to propose to a girl in an online game, naive otaku Hideki Roshian Nishimura is devastated when she flat out rejects him. To make matters worse, the girl reveals that she is actually an older man in real life. With his dreams crushed and his heart broken, Rushin comes to an abrupt decision in the midst of his raging fit. He will never trust another girl in an online game again. Years later, Rushin is now in a guild with 3 other players, one of whom possesses a female avatar by the name of Akko. Akko is deeply in love with Rushin and wants to marry him. Although he entertains the possibility that she might be a guy, Rushin accepts her proposal, claiming that her gender doesn't matter as long as she is cute in the game. However, after a discussion between guild members that led to all of them having an offline meeting, Rushin finds out that Akko, along with the other members, are not just girls, but also his schoolmates. This one, I'm not too familiar with it. I admittedly skipped out on watching the anime because that's my thing. I don't watch anime based on light novels until I've caught up with the light novels. I don't know if we're ever going to get this one licensed though. I mean, it's 18 volumes, so it's a longer series. That already makes it a little harder to get licensed. And the anime is a couple years old now, so again, a couple strikes against it. Although this does sound kind of like the cute setup that would do well. We're actually getting a new license. I've actually posted it to the community board here on YouTube. What is it? Oh geez, I should have looked it up. It's Tomozaki-kun is the series. It's actually, I've mentioned it a number of times here in the top 10 about a gamer who believes that life is a crappy game, and then this other girl who's a gamer says, let me show you cheats that'll make life better for you. And so we're getting that. So we're kind of getting that slice of life gaming type thing. So I don't know, maybe we'll see this series someday, but like I said, I mean, Tomozaki-kun's only 7 volumes long, so it seems like publishers currently are shying away from the longer series. This one, you know, 18 volumes, but, well, maybe someday. At number 8, with 6,734 copies sold, volume number 9 of Knights and Magic. This one, of course, on the list last week. No license for the light novels. You can actually read the manga via Crunchyroll, and there was a 13 episode anime which aired July to September of 2017. It's licensed for English release by Funimation, and according to the internets, covered up to the 5th volume of the light novel series. This one is kind of a cool blend of isekai and mecha. It's basically about an otaku who's obsessed with mecha, who is reborn into another world where, yep, giant robots exist. And it reminds me a little bit of Escaflowne in terms of that whole, like, the society seems kind of like a medieval society, but yet it's got these giant robots. I mean, I haven't watched it because, again, part of me hopes that we may one day see this licensed for English release, so I don't know as much about it. I just know that the main character, his whole goal in this new world is to become a pilot of one of these giant robots. So I love me some mecha, so I mean, I think mecha and isekai is a pretty potent blend of genres, so maybe this will be one we see someday down the road. At number 7, with 7,295 copies sold, Volume 8 of Biblia Koshodou no Jiken Techou, or The Case Files of the Biblia Secondhand Bookstore, or Antiquarian Bookshop, Biblia's Case Files. Kind of depends what you go by, because this one has a live-action TV series, which was 11 episodes long, which you can stream on Crunchyroll. And actually, there is now, in Japan, a live-action film, which may explain why this one's been on the list for several weeks now. There is no license, though, for the actual light novels in English. This one about a used bookstore where the proprietor gets involved in sort of uncovering the secrets and mysteries behind the books that come into her store. I really like the live action series. This is definitely a series that I would love to see get licensed because it's very unlike pretty much anything else we have. At number 6, with 10,454 copies sold, Volume 4 of Isekai Nonbiri Noka, or Farming Life in Another World. No license for these light novels about a man who dies after struggling with disease for a very long time. One of the things that brought him comfort while he was sick was watching this show about farming, and so when he's given the opportunity to be reborn, he chooses to be reborn in a healthy body and to take up farming. From some of you, I've heard that this is a pretty chill, laid-back type series, and that mostly it is sort of like just that slice of life, like there's no really big, huge, overarching story over the whole thing, that it's really just about sort of the day-to-day lives. One person said there is a demon lord, but if anything, it's not like a real threat. If anything, the demon lord's kind of put out by just how this guy, by farming, is just causing trouble for the demon lord. It sounds like basically it's kind of like a world building almost, like his farm becomes successful, and so it's about sort of this community building up around his farm. There are apparently harem aspects. Now, one thing that somebody said to me, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how these two things connect, but they said they didn't think this would ever get licensed because there is a rape scene in it, which I found pretty surprising. I don't know if any of you want to comment on that, if you're familiar, or, you know, maybe that is not in this title and that person was just either trolling me or was mistaken. I don't know, but like I said, I was kind of curious about it because I thought this just does, those two things do not seem to jive with what I'm hearing about this from everybody else. So in any case, this one, it's still a relatively newer series, but every volume has been on the top 10 ever since I've started doing this countdown. So maybe it's something that we might get in the future. At number 5, with 11,346 copies sold, Volume 19 of Strike the Blood. This one we do actually have licensed in English by Yen On. They're going to be releasing Volume 11 in January of 2019, so there's currently 10 volumes out. I have woefully fallen behind, but hoping to catch up at some point, because not a bad series, kind of fun, sort of Monster of the Week romp. There was a 24-episode anime plus 10 OVAs that have been released to date, but they are actually going to be releasing another OVA season in 2019. I'm not too sure how much that OVA season is going to cover up to. I mean, I guess it's possible that it'll cover up to some of the more recent material. This one, Kojo Akatsuki used to be an ordinary high school boy, but that was before he became the 4th primogenitor, the most powerful vampire of all time. Worse, he doesn't even remember how it happened. Middle schooler Yukina Himaragi, meanwhile, is the attacked mage sent to observe him, and to stop him if he gets out of control. But was it really a good idea to send a cute girl to observe a massively powerful vampire boy whose abilities activate whenever he gets aroused? And on an artificial island populated with all manner of demonic individuals, each with their own designs on the 4th primogenitor? So like I said, kind of a fun action series involving a whole host of magic and monsters and mythology, and you know, I had read up to, I believe, volume 7. I think 8, yeah, 8 is on my shelf currently, so I'm 3 behind. And it was very much sort of like a Monster of the Week type series, but it started changing like with volume 6 and volume 6 and volume 7. So it's something that I'd like to continue with. Actually, it's kind of interesting that this series, volume 19, this one, it has been a year since the previous, well, almost a year since the last volume of Strike the Blood. The only thing that has appeared on this list in that time have been 2 sort of side story volumes that the author put out. So I don't know whether this is building up to sort of the end of the series, and maybe that's why there's wider gaps, or what's going on, but in any case, that is going to be at number 5. At number 4, with 12,082 copies sold, Volume 16 of Slayers. Now this is kind of interesting because this volume premiered a couple weeks ago and was on the top 10, then fell out of the top 10, and has now returned to the top 10. This is actually the first new volume of this series in 18 years. There was 104 anime episodes over 5 seasons. The first and last 2 seasons are on Crunchyroll, although is that still true with the whole Funimation thing? I'm not too sure. I haven't checked since then, so maybe it's not. The first 8 volumes of the series were covered by the anime. Slayers follows the adventures of teenage sorceress Lena Inverse and her companions as they journey through their world. Using powerful magic and swordsmanship, they battle overreaching wizards, demons seeking to destroy the world, dark lords, and the occasional hapless gang of bandits. Now again, this is actually kind of an interesting series because it was licensed and started to be released in English years ago, and that was by Tokyopop. And when Tokyopop went bust in like around 2008, the whole publication ceased, and basically Slayers has been in licensed limbo ever since. I know that there's a lot of people that are kind of saying, hey, you know, with new material and everything else, this is probably a time to start taking a look at this series. It is definitely historically a very important light novel, because it was kind of like the early 90s when light novels were just sort of starting to really break into the scene, and this was definitely one of those really important series during the 90s in terms of anime. It was one of the big titles that was coming over and licensed in English. Pretty influential all around in terms of its development. In fact, a lot of people, when I've read a couple of histories about light novels and their development, a lot of people credit Slayers and the success of the Slayers anime with being sort of that series that really started to push publishers into thinking that light novels could not just be books, but also be sort of like these mass media projects. So, I mean, Slayers, a really kind of important series, and a series that I know a lot of people have soft spots for, especially older fans such as myself who came through the 90s and stuff and remember watching it. So, I don't know if this one's going to get rescued or not, but I certainly would be happy to see that happen. At number 3, with 14,893 copies sold, Volume 15 of Death March Kara Hajimaru Isekai Kiyoso Kyoku, or as we have it in English, Death March to the Parallel World Rhapsody. This one is licensed for English release by Yen On. They'll be releasing Volume 7 in January of 2019. It did have a 12-episode anime, which aired January to March of 2018 and streamed on Crunchyroll. And there is a manga, which is also licensed by Yen Press and is currently being released. Sato, an adult programmer, suddenly noticed that he was thrown into another world wearing casual clothes at level 1. He gained a high level and many treasures after using the 3 times use disposable magic meteor shower once. After that, he intends to do another world sightseeing tour. He meets 3 beast-kin girls, beautiful purple and black-haired sisters, and an eccentric blonde-haired elf girl, along with various people during his trip. Although occasionally fighting demons and demon lords, this is a heartwarming fantasy story at heart. So I read the first volume of this, and it's one of those series that at the time, because of, well, just because there's so many series to try and cover, I just kind of let it go. But it sounds like it's one of those series, and in talking to you guys, the fans, it sounds to me like it's one of those series that really, you've got to get more into it for it to really click. And it definitely sounds like the anime didn't do this series any favors in terms of how it adapted the material. I've heard from quite a number of you that the books are way, like substantially better than the anime would have had you believe. So again, it's one of those series that I always say, oh, I kind of wish I could get back to and read a bit more because I don't feel like maybe I've given it the proper chance. But when I've got such a huge pile of books already to be read and brand new stuff coming out basically every single month, I just don't know if I'm going to get to it. But definitely I know this seems to be sort of like a very, it is kind of like that sort of road trip type isekai series if you're kind of looking for something like that. At number 2, with 19,977 copies sold, our previous week's number 1, Volume 15 of Kono Subarashi Sakai ni Shukufuku wo, or as we have it in English, Konosuba, God's Blessing on This Wonderful World. This is licensed for English release by Yen On. They'll be releasing the 7th volume on December 11th of 2018. There is a 22-episode anime series which covered volumes 1 to 4, which you can watch on Crunchyroll. And there is a feature film coming in 2019, which, based on all things available, looks to be an adaptation of volume number 5. This one, game-loving shut-in Kazuma Sato's life as a young schoolboy in Japan abruptly comes to an early end, or at least it was supposed to. When he opens his eyes, though, he sees a beautiful goddess that offers him a once-in-an-afterlifetime chance to be reborn in a parallel world. The catch is that the world is violent and threatened by a growing evil. Fortunately, he can choose any one thing to bring with him. So, he chooses the goddess Aqua. And so his adventure with his gorgeous companion begins. If he could just get enough money and food to survive, keep his goddess out of trouble, and avoid grabbing the attention of the Demon King's army. Now this one I've read up to volume number 5. Actually, I just reviewed volume number 5 this week. it's a great series. It's just a lot of fun. It's just filled with these really colorful characters, and I don't think that there's really anything else that needs to be said. If you're just looking for something that's a really good time, definitely up until this point I can say it delivers. Finally, at number 1, with 37,784 copies sold, Volume 27 of Mahoka Koko no Reitosei, or as we have it in English, The Irregular at Magic High School. I mean, most of you are not going to be surprised that a new volume of this series is number 1. It pretty much always is. Actually, I have never once seen a volume of this come out and not be number 1. It is licensed by Yen On. Volume 10 is being released December 18th of 2018. There is a 26-episode anime which covered volumes 1 to 7 but excluded volume number 5, which you could stream on Crunchyroll. Magic. It is a product of neither legends nor fairy tales, but instead has become a technology of reality since a time unknown to people. Supernatural power became a technology systematized through magic, while magic became a technical skill. A supernatural power user became a magic technician. Magic technicians, in short magicians, are nurtured through magic high schools and universities. This is a story about a defective elder brother and low achiever, a perfect, flawless younger sister and high achiever. After both siblings entered a magic high school, the stage of daily turbulence was unveiled. Now, I've only read the first 2 volumes of this series, and mainly that was because I'd watched the entire anime, so I had a hard time getting into the books. It's one of those series that I keep saying to myself, like, given the popularity of it, maybe I should go back to it now that enough time's passed that I really don't remember much of it. But, you know, at the same time, 27 volumes seems like a pretty substantial investment. Now, there's been all sorts of talk and rumor about this series that it's starting to wind down and that it's coming towards a conclusion. But nobody, even though I've seen that quoted in a couple of different places in like reliable sources like Anime News Network and stuff like that, nobody knows when. Nobody has said, oh, this will be the final volume number whatever. None of that's happened. They've basically just said, oh yeah, the author is working towards the end of the series. Well, I mean, when you leave it that open-ended, that's true back when he started volume number 1. He was working towards the end of the series. So who knows how many more of these we have. You know, the spin-off, the very first spin-off of this one just spent a couple weeks at number 1. Every time there's a new volume, it's at number 1. Like, I really couldn't blame this guy for trying to stretch this thing out for as long as possible just based on the fact that it just keeps doing so well. This week, I want to say special thanks to Ricardo Matos, Mirage GSM, and Jean-Luc Chartier for their support on Patreon, as well as the support of all of my patrons who help me to continue to buy books for this channel, to pay for additional hosting so that we can get the Light Novel podcast out to as many platforms as possible, and in the hopes of trying to build the popularity of light novels overall. So those are your top 10 best-selling light novels in Japan for the week of November 5th to the 11th of 2018. I don't know, I'm pretty confident that The Irregular at Magic High School will be number 1 again next week, but I admit I did not look at see what's coming out next week, but I'm pretty sure there's probably nothing that's going to be a major contender to take this novel out. It always spends at least 2 weeks at the number 1 spot, but you know, there's a first time for everything. You'll just have to join me next week to find out. So if you're brand new to the channel and you love light novels, or you're just starting to get interested in them, you should consider subscribing. I do this countdown every single week, as well as weekly reviews, news, and the Light Novel podcast is posted here as well. Thank you so much for joining me in this video. I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Till then, bye-bye for now.